Down, down, yellow and brown, the leaves are falling all over the ground. That's a song I learned in kindergarten. And it's perfect for today because I'm going to talk about my very first friends when I was a wee little bairn. Hello, INCOGWERIDOS, and welcome to Terra INCOGWERIDO on this amazing autumn day. Aunt Angie here wearing her favorite t-shirt. Is it any surprise to anyone that Buckethead is Aunt Angie's favorite guitarist? Of course not. Buckethead definitely lives in Terra INCOGWERIDO. I designed this shirt. I did not make this image. Some amazing artist on the internet made this image, and it says Buckethead. It's the great Axeman Charlie Brown, and I freaking love this shirt. Okay, so enough about my obsession with Buckethead and homemade t-shirts. Okay, so today, in keeping with our trying to bring me forward in my life and tell you my story sequentially, I'm going to talk more about the very first friends that I made when we moved from Edgewood to the house near the Pot Spring Mansion in Timonium, Maryland. And as I already explained to you in the video that I shot up on Mount Hood near the Timberline Hotel, my first interaction on that property was with a rock wall. And, I was 3 going on 4, and, I didn't know that you weren't supposed to be friends with rocks. I mean, it was the first entity that really reached out to me and taught me things and was very friendly with me. So after that first instance, which I guess I will link somewhere, YouTube will put it up there in the sky. I'll link to the video where I talk about the rock wall. So after that first incident of parapsychometry with me touching the rock wall, I got very used to hanging around the rock wall. And as I told you, the rock wall, it was 2-sided, right? Because it used to be the old road that went up to the mansion. So I began going up that hill every day, and there was a break in the wall where an old oak tree, there were oak trees set into the wall about one every 100 feet, and these were really old oak trees. In terms of the East Coast, they were like 300 years old, so these were some pretty massive trees. So one of them had fallen down, and it fell towards the forest, so it fell from the edge of my lawn and across the opposite wall and into the forest. So that's how I would get up there. I would climb over the log, which would take me into this sort of dell. It was where I lived. There's a hot spring. What a surprise! There were a lot of underground springs, right? So there were a lot of sinkholes and caved in hillsides because the underground spring was carving out spaces, in these hills. So right behind my house, on the border of the edge of my property to the mansion, there was this sinkhole, and it was like this beautiful, rounded dell, and it was covered, the hillsides were covered with daffodils in the spring, and there were all these big trees and of course the rock wall along the edge. So I would go up there, and I'd lay my back on the rock wall, and it would tell me more about it taught me about plate tectonics and how we were floating on a raft of rock, and it taught me about volcanism, and it would just speak to me in its very slow, thoughtful rock way. If you think Ents, the tree people from Lord of the Rings, think slowly and speak slowly, you should try a rock sometime. It takes forever for them to say hello. So I guess my best friend was the rock wall. And the rock wall would inform me about other things going on in the forest. So it would direct me to talk to trees and to notice that there was movement in all of the low-lying plants that were on the ground. And so I started leaning up against trees and talking to trees. And some of those trees in that dell were my best friends. And so I would either be sitting with my back against the rock or my back against the tree. And there was one particular tree that I really liked to put my back up against because the sun shone through the canopy and onto the ground right at the base of the tree, and it was nice and warm, and I could see, like, I was up on the hill above my house and I could see my house and my neighbor's house, and I could look to my left and see my other neighbors. And once I had climbed up to the top of the dell and I saw the mansion up there, so I knew the mansion was right behind me. And I wasn't exactly afraid of the mansion, but it was ginormous to my 3.5-year-old mind. It was just the biggest structure I had ever seen, and it was very daunting. It was mysterious, and it was like the first time I saw it, like I had this mental itch in my head, like, you know, I knew that something was going to happen with me and that mansion, which does occur later on. And I think maybe the first or second time, I think it was the second time I peeked over the hillside to look up at the mansion, I saw a very tall African American woman, all dressed in white, with her head wrapped in a beautiful, clean, white, headscarf, and she was standing at a window on the second story, and she wasn't looking at me, but she was looking out across the valley to another mansion that you could see from the top of the hill. That mansion, Ridgley mansion, I think. I blanked out on the name. Anyway, so the second time, first or second, I can't remember, I saw her standing up there by the window, and she was just looking across the valley, and there was just something in the way she was standing there and looking that made me really sad. And I felt like I was intruding, so I slipped down beneath the edge of the bowl, and I went back to my tree, and I sat up against my tree. So I would sit there. We moved in the spring, and throughout the summer I would go up there during the spring and the early summer. The rest of my siblings were all of school age, so they would all be gone during the day, and my mom would let me out the door, and as long as I came back for lunch, she was not too concerned about where I was or what I was doing. This was would have been 1967, so things were very different. So I'd sit against the tree, and I would go out of body, which I also explained to you in another video, that I kind of developed that ability sort of by accident very early, and I would lift up out of my body, and I'd go up above the forest canopy, and I twirl around so I could see the entire neighborhood. And I could see that, like, up on the hill on the other side of the mansion, there were some kids like my age playing up there, but I wasn't ready to make human friends yet. But I knew they were there for later. And so then I would look, and then I'd look back down to my tree and where my body was. And in my out of body state, I noticed that there was this like swirl of energy that surrounded me and the tree just like go around and around me in circles, and it was almost like a mist, and it was green, and it was sparkly, and it just swirled around me. And every time I went out of body, I realized that this green sparkly mist was surrounding me and following me everywhere I went. So one day while I was sitting up against the tree, I asked the tree what it was. What was the green sparkly? And the tree didn't respond in words, but it let me know that the green sparkle was the embodiment of a forest spirit that lived in the forest. And it wasn't the spirit of like the individual tree that I was sitting up against and talking to. It was an actual greater forest protector that lived in this area of what was left of the forest area around where I lived. So because it was green, I started to call it green. and then I started to notice that everywhere around me I was completely surrounded in green, because, as I said, I spent most of my time in the forest, and I didn't see the sky very much because there was just this beautiful undulating canopy of dappled, variegated green above my head and green at my feet, and everywhere that I looked it was green. So I would say my first two friends were, number one, the rock wall, and number two, where's my hand? Where'd it go? There. And number two, a spirit of the forest that I called green. Okay, so green and rock were my first friends. Oh, and how the incog-weirdness starts from the very beginning and follows all the way up until this day. I happen to be coming to you today from right above my property, and I am sitting in my Cryptid Interaction area right now. I actually have the computer sitting on my interaction table. We will get around to the cryptids. They came to me a little later in life when I moved out here into the back ass side of nowhere in Oregon, and started having some very unusual things happen. And not just to me, it was happening in and around the house, and everyone else who lived in the house was, part of that. So guys, I would really, really love to hear from you about your first non-human friends, who or what they were. I did not have imaginary friends. I mean, you may think those were imaginary friends. It might sound like it, but no, they were not imaginary. Okay, I'm straight up telling you. Auntie Angie has had a lot of incog-weirdness, but imaginary friend is not one of them. Well, again, when I start telling you stories about the mansion and who I met there, you might think they're imaginary friends as well. But you can be the determiner of that. I wanted to leave you today with a poem that I wrote, channeled, because I really never remember actually writing anything. It just kind of happens. This is one of those books that it's like, says this book belongs, keep doing it, this book belongs to, and you're supposed to put your name, but because all my poetry is channeled from a divine source, I said this book belongs to God, because God by any other name, for me God is love. God is everything. It's all of us. It's everywhere. This book and everything else belongs to God. Okay, so I'm trying to guess I should have I should have found the poem. first before I promise to read it to you. Let me see. I got a lot of tabbed. Where are you? Oh, great. I'll find it. I'm just going to have to go through, and you're just going to have to be patient with your Auntie Angie. Here it is. Okay. I did have it tabbed. Okay. So, I think this poem is kind of important because this is how I view how we perceive, interact with what we call reality. Okay. So, you may hear me often describing my body as my fleshy vehicle because my body is not me. Your body is not you. Sorry to break the news to you in case you didn't know. Your energy is you, okay? And your body is a vehicle, and that's what this poem is about. So, today I will leave you with the poem called Cosmic Car Lot. Your body is like a car, a vehicle in which you live. It gets you from here to there. It requires constant maintenance, fuel for optimal performance, and woefully depreciates as soon as you drive it off the lot. Its final destination, the scrap heap, is a fate that escapes no make or model. Lucky for us, the purveyor of this cosmic car lot allows endless trade-ins, as many as it takes to convince you to stop purchasing vehicles. Okay. So I think that poem also gives away a little bit that I kind of have a Buddhist mindset in that I believe that the purpose of living is to learn how to escape it and transcend. And on that note, INCOGWEIRDOS, I love you very much. I'm going to do a little psychic practice with you. Sorry, my table is a little unstable. Okay, so I'm going to look at something. I'm going to move it. I know you can hear it, but I'm moving it to the side so I can look at it. I'm looking at it. Okay, and it is an object. I'm going to be psychic practice. I'm going to be looking at something. I'll look at you, and then down in the comments, you guess what it is. Purple Mommy is the biggest, bravest INCOGWEIRDO in the land because she is the only one who plays this game with me. So come on, me and Purple Mommy would like some other playmates along with the rock and green and the trees and the spirits and the cryptids. Okay, so here we go. Psychic practice for today. All right, looking at you. What is it? What am I looking at? Looking at you. What is it? What am I looking at? You can do it. I know you can do it. Come on, you can do it. Okay, one more time. I'm screaming it at you. I'm screaming it. Okay. All right, yay. Okay, Tara INCOGWEIRDOS. So if somebody calls you a weirdo, what do? You say thank you. And, you could probably add a couple expletives to that if you like. It was wonderful seeing you today. Tune in next week. I'm going to do a video about Halloween's origins in the Celtic world, and I'm going to try to dispel some misunderstandings about the Tuatha De Danann, who were a real people, okay? And how they got transformed into fairies. It's kind of interesting. All right, my lovelies, have a weird day. Enjoy yourselves. I love you so much. And I'll see you next time here on Tara INCOGWEIRDO. Slango Fall.